Last broadcast from Sable Hill Chapter 1. The voice on Band 4. Sable Hill crouched low on the Cornish coast, a weather-beaten hamlet of stone cottages, sagging fences, and lichen-covered slate roofs. Perched high above the Atlantic, the village seemed built more to endure than to thrive. Gulls wheeled overhead on gusts that never quite died down, and salt clung to everything: the windows, the mailboxes, even the marrow in your bones if you stayed too long. Harold Fincher had stayed far too long. Each morning he walked the same path from his cottage to the edge of the bluff, thermos of tea in hand, where the wind battered his overcoat like it had a grudge. He'd nod to the sea, mutter something about "still here then," and return to the radio shed at the back of his property, a timber-walled extension that leaned slightly westward, as if listening to the ocean. Inside, the shed smelled of dust, warm valves, and paraffin. His Marconi rig, salvaged from a decommissioned Royal Signals base in '51, dominated the bench. Wires dangled like vines. A tangle of tuning forks, solder coils, and cracked dials surrounded him like the control console of some half-dreamed machine. Harold was 62, sharp-minded but hunched. His hands bore the fine tremble of age and years of solder work, and he still smoked roll-ups despite doctors' warnings. Most in the village thought him odd, but harmless. The boys at the pub called him the Listener. That day, October 18th, 1967, began like any other. But by dusk, Harold Fincher would become the last man in Sable Hill to be truly alone. The signal came as he was preparing to shut down for the evening. The storm had passed, leaving the skies rinsed pale blue, though the wind never really stopped. He logged the bands methodically, flipping between frequencies like a man scanning for ghosts. It was during a pass through Band 4, around 4.18 MHz, that he heard it. At first, it was just a flutter, a rise in the noise floor. He almost ignored it. Sea bounce probably, or ionospheric scatter. But then it returned, a spike, faint, deliberate. He adjusted the fine-tuner. The signal sharpened. 3 short bursts, pause, 1 long, then a repeat. Morse code. He froze. Not because Morse was rare. He used it himself, but because of the rhythm. It was off. Like someone trying to mimic it from memory, a beginner, or something else entirely. He scribbled in his logbook, 327 hours, Band 4, narrow spike, artificial pattern suspected. Then, curiosity piqued, he responded. SOS, simple, universal. The reply came instantly. I am LIR-7. His heart ticked up a gear. LIR-7? A code name? Military op? He scanned the frequency history. Nothing. He powered up the reel-to-reel recorder, its tape spinning into memory. Signal received, 327 hours, 4.18 MHz. Designation, LIR-7. He leaned back. The wind had stopped, almost unnaturally. He couldn't hear the gulls. The stillness unsettled him. Then the voice came. Not Morse, not static. A voice. Halro, Fincher. His blood chilled. Flashback, 1944 Italy. Winter. Mud to the knees, radios flaring and dying in the cold. Harold, Corporal Fincher back then, had strung aerial wire through ruined bell towers and relayed coordinates for artillery across broken mountains. Once he'd picked up a German frequency broadcasting British officer names. His own had been among them. He remembered that same twist in his gut, that same taste of metal in his mouth. Names meant targeting. Back in the present, Harold pressed the mic key. I comprehend. Identify yourself. The voice, clearer now, returned. Designation, LER-7. Mission incomplete. Seeking relay. Human contact confirmed. He sat there, heartbeat throbbing in his fingertips. It couldn't be a hoax. The voice wasn't synthetic, nor fully human. He shut the curtains and bolted the door. What is your origin? He asked. A pause. Earth, but not your Earth. Sable Hill, later that night. The pub buzzed as usual. 5 men, 1 dog, and a barkeep who only turned on the telly for cricket and the Queen's address. Harold entered, like a man halfway between the past and the present. He ordered his pint. Didn't drink it. Something wrong, Fincher? Old Tom Waller asked. Harold shook his head, then reconsidered. You ever heard of LIR-7? Tom squinted. Sounds like a band name, or a bad motorbike. Harold didn't laugh. At home that night, he listened again. The signal had grown stronger, the tone more refined. The voice repeated his name with uncanny accuracy. Harold Fincher, receiver confirmed, initiating relay sequence. He had no idea what that meant. But he was beginning to fear that someone or something did. and it had found him first. Chapter 2. The Archivist. The morning after the signal, Harold woke before dawn. He didn't sleep much anymore. Not since Margaret passed in 59, and certainly not since the war, though those were different ghosts. These days, it was the silence that rattled him. The flat, breathless quiet that filled the space between gull cries and wind gusts. And now, there was something new inside that silence. A signal. He shuffled into the kitchen, lit the stove, and brewed tea in an old chipped kettle. The walls of his cottage carried last night's chill. Rain drizzled against the windows, soft and insistent. On the table sat the logbook, open to the page marked LIR7. He traced the letters with a finger. Whoever, or whatever, had spoken to him, it hadn't transmitted again during the night. But the signal remained, weak, constant. A whisper just below the floorboards of the world. He wanted to tell someone, needed to, but who? Tom Waller thought he was mad. The lads at the pub had never touched a radio in their lives. The Home Office would likely confiscate his gear and label him a liability. By mid-morning, the decision was made for him. A knock came at the door. Not the wind, not the postman. A firm, professional knock. 3 evenly spaced raps. Harold opened it to find a woman standing on his front step. Mid-30s, soaked to the knees, hair pinned back beneath a rain hood. She held a leather satchel against her chest and offered a polite smile. "Mr. Fincher?" He nodded, cautious. "Rose Marwick," she said, stepping forward slightly. "Audio archivist. I'm collecting oral histories and radio logs from the war era. You were Signals Corps, yes?" He hesitated. "That was a long time ago." "I'm aware," she said, undeterred. "But your name came up in a declassified training manual from the late 40s. Something about innovative field transmission systems. I'm archiving for a Ministry of Culture project." He motioned her inside, mostly to get her out of the rain. In the shed, she moved slowly, respectfully, as though in a museum. Her eyes swept over the Marconi rig and recorder reels, the banks of notes, the shelves of obsolete parts. "You still run the whole thing?" she asked. "Every day." "And what are you listening for?" Harold hesitated, then lied. "Nothing in particular." Rose crouched near the tuner, running a finger along the casing. "I read about a frequency anomaly in this area," she said casually. "Some call it the Cornish Ghost Band. Supposedly, it cycles through every few decades. Ever caught anything odd?" Harold narrowed his eyes. "Is that part of the ministry's archive too?" She met his gaze. "Let's say I'm curious, both professionally and personally." He didn't answer. Instead, he turned the dial. The rig hummed to life. The signal was there, low, steady, a faint pulse riding the static. He let her listen. Rose's expression didn't change, but she tapped her thumb twice against her thigh. A reflex. "You've been responding, haven't you?" she asked softly. Harold said nothing. Then she opened her satchel and pulled out a thin folder. Inside, a printout. A spectrograph image with timestamp overlays. "This was intercepted at a monitoring station outside Plymouth 2 days ago," she said. "They didn't know what to make of it, but I did." She flipped the page. The words were unmistakable. "I am LIR7, Rose looked up. "Whatever this is, Mr. Fincher, it's not just talking to you." Chapter 3. Numbers and Ghosts. The following morning, Harold found Rose already waiting in the shed. She had let herself in. The door wasn't locked. Out here, it never was. She'd brewed tea, set it on a metal tray, and sat near the rig with her sleeves rolled to the elbow, examining one of his tape reels like a museum conservator. "You keep excellent logs," she said, not looking up. Harold grunted. "Wouldn't be much use otherwise." He set down his thermos, took a seat beside her and studied the receiver. The signal was still there, same pulse, same rhythm. No words last night, just presence. As though LIR7 was waiting. Rose flipped through her folder. The intercepts from Plymouth weren't isolated. There were similar anomalies reported by NATO listening posts in Iceland and Greece. Identical signatures, same structure. Some even picked up the call sign. "LIR7, Harold said quietly. She nodded. "I thought it was a hoax, some kind of Cold War disinformation exercise. But this signal predates modern scrambling protocols. It's not bouncing from a Soviet sub. It's something else." She handed him a grainy photocopy of a spectrogram. The waveform resembled a sine curve threaded with irregular beats. Not noise, a pattern. "It's broadcasting across multiple ionospheric windows," she said. "Impossible for 1960s technology. Even today, most stations couldn't do this. Harold frowned. You said windows, plural. Rose flipped another page. 6 separate locations across the Northern Hemisphere are receiving similar signals, but only yours is responding. He stared at the image. You're saying I'm the only one talking back? Yes, and that's why I need your help. Harold rubbed the bridge of his nose. You're not Ministry of Culture, are you? She hesitated, then shook her head. No. MI5? No. Independent. Sort of. She pulled a card from her satchel. It wasn't government issued. No emblem, just a name, the Relic Group. What the devil is that? He asked. We study non-standard transmissions, she said. Not aliens, not nonsense, just things that don't fit. Harold chuckled, then stopped himself. Things that don't fit, like voices from the sky calling me by name, Rose nodded. Exactly. That evening, Harold sat alone in the shed. Rose had left with a few copied logs and a promise to return. The signal remained, steady, soft. He tuned in, fingers light on the dials. LER-7, he said into the mic. You said you're from Earth, but not mine. Explain. Silence, then a crackle, a low, modulated voice. Timeline fracture confirmed. Contact node unstable, memory stores corrupted, seeking interface. Harold scribbled the response, then keyed again. What are you seeking? Stability, continuity, retrieval. Then, without warning, a new signal bled into the feed, harsh, erratic. It drowned Ilya's voice in screeching feedback. The Marconi rig hissed and glowed too bright. Harold flipped switches. Dialed down the gain. Finally, it cleared. The original signal returned. Quieter now, almost hesitant. Other nodes, listening. Harold sat back, throat dry. Someone, or something else, had joined the line. Chapter 4. The deep relay rain lashed Sable Hill by morning. Slate rooftops ran slick with salt water and runoff. Down in the village, the pub stage shut, the bakery opened late, and the few souls who passed Harold Fincher on the street nodded without stopping. Something was changing. Even the weather felt off. Back in his shed, Harold ran diagnostics on the Marconi. He'd been up most of the night, scribbling signal patterns by candlelight. LER-7 hadn't responded again, not since the interference. But the pulses had changed, not louder, just faster, urgent. Rose arrived just before noon, her coat soaked through, her eyes glassy from lack of sleep. I tracked the signal overlay, she said by way of greeting. There's a mathematical sequence embedded in the pulse. Not just data, a countdown. Harold stared. To what? She hesitated. We're not sure, but it correlates with tidal drift, lunar alignment, and a region of ocean off the Scilly Isles. Elia's message, if you follow the harmonics, it's pointing somewhere. She pulled a sheet from her folder, a crude map with a set of coordinates circled in red. This location matches nothing. No charts, no undersea cables, just empty water. Except it's not, Harold said. They looked at each other. That night, Harold and Rose loaded the Marconi's portable cousin, a modified military field unit, into the back of a rusted Morris Traveller and drove to a private dock near Porth Cressa. Harold's old fishing mate, Charlie Green, had agreed to take them out. No questions asked. Just a flask of whiskey and enough petrol to reach the site and back. They set off under a moonless sky, the sea calm but wrong, like something holding its breath. The boat's engine sputtered once but held. 30 minutes out, Rose activated the receiver. Elia's pulse came through strong, clean, louder than ever. We're close, she murmured. Then the receiver flared, not with sound but with light, a pulse of blue across the dials. Harold leaned in. A new voice, Elia's voice. Spoke directly, node proximity achieved, opening relay, stand by. What's it mean? Harold asked. Rose was pale. I think it's initiating something, not just a transmission, a transfer. Below the boat, sonar pinged, a shape on the scanner, round and massive, too regular to be natural. The sea began to hum. Back on land, they reviewed the recordings. The pulse had shifted from binary to trinary code, impossible by conventional standards. Rose passed fragments. You are the relay. What does it want? Harold asked again. Rose didn't answer. She just replayed the last words Elia sent before the signal went dark. Arrival sequence locked, legacy interface confirmed, retrieval begins. The relay wasn't a broadcast, it was a beacon, and Harold Fincher had just switched it on. Chapter 5, The Last Broadcast. By morning the signal was gone, not just quiet, gone. No pulse, no modulation, no drift. Harold swept every band on the Marconi, then again with the backup receiver. Nothing. The ether was silent. Rose sat on the floor of the shed, with maps spread around her like fallen leaves. Her eyes were red. Her fingers trembled slightly as she traced and retraced the same set of coordinates. "It was real," she said. "It happened." Harold nodded slowly. "I know. They sent the tapes to multiple places. One to an old university contact of Rose's in Geneva, one to a British intelligence courier in London, and one, the master reel, was buried in a sealed tin beneath Harold's floorboards. Then they waited. The world didn't end. No alien ships descended. No headlines screamed about strange lights or seismic readings in the channel. But strange things did happen. Across the northern hemisphere, radar systems logged phantom returns. Arcs of high-altitude blips that appeared and vanished within seconds. In Canada, a team of geologists reported unexplained harmonics beneath Hudson Bay. In Norway, the aurora pulsed blue for an entire night, even though the sun hadn't stirred. Still, nothing official was said. The news kept to elections, strikes, and the Beatles. 3 weeks passed before the final message came. It didn't arrive on the Marconi. It came by post, an unmarked envelope. Inside, a single reel of tape and a typed note. "This is not a threat. This is the proof. Thank you." The reel played nothing intelligible at first. Static, oscillating tones, faint whispers like overlapping conversations. Then, unmistakably, Elia's voice. But not the same. Human now. Fluent, resonant. "You heard us," the voice said. "You remembered. The relay is complete." Rose sat frozen. Harold leaned closer. "What is the relay?" he asked aloud, as though Elia might still be listening. The tape continued. "We are your legacy. Sent across time, scattered like ash on wind, not to warn, but to reach, to survive. You were the echo we needed. You were the last voice before forgetting." Then a final line. "One of you will come, and when you do, you'll find the archive. Everything we were, everything we lost, waiting." Harold never received another message. He died quietly 5 years later, in his sleep, in the same chair where he first heard the pulse. Rose inherited the property. She didn't sell it. The shed remained untouched, the equipment covered but ready. Every year, on October 18th, she powered up the receiver, and every year, for exactly 11 seconds, a signal returned. Not a message, just a sound, a single note, warm, steady, like someone somewhere was still listening.